You, Jess. To you. I'm going to ask for, oh, I don't know if that's working. People to maybe excuse. Over my shoulder here is the picture of my greyhound. My wife, you can probably hear her tapping. She works very long hours just beside me here, but that's her brown, she's waving her brown paper. And then our little girl who loves to join us, the greyhound, snoozing there. You may see her paws go in the air later. She has the cockroach effect when she sleeps on her back.
On your personal page as well. Any interview being shared. Yeah, like maybe share it on my personal page for a period of time. Well, no, not just do it for a period of time. I do it on my I'll show it on my personal one. Yeah. But tell them to go and join. Also put the thing to go and join on his page.
I love, oh, there we go. We're back.
So already.
Yeah. Just give another minute or two and we'll kick in. Well done too on the meditation, mate. I'm really happy that you're doing that again.
Yeah, I mean, for those of people that are on now, that's something that we're doing again this Saturday. That we got a lot of great feedback and appreciation from last Saturday. So I mean, it was in aid of and in conjunction with the protests around, or the rallies, I'd probably call them, around the country. And I hear there's another one going on in Melbourne this week, but it's a grounding process, and for anyone who wants to be a part of that, it's free, it's open, available, and the intention is that we go beyond needing some event to do it, but it's available for everyone. So come, share, bring friends. It's about 15-20 minutes of just becoming present. Something you can apply in your life each and every day.
Yeah, well, gee, mate, last weekend was gold, and the fact you had Wales jumping out on off the coast there was just amazing.
First ones of the year.
We might make a start. So welcome everyone. Thank you for your kind comments at the moment. I'm just going to check them, make sure I can get chats and questions. I can't see Q&As, so that's gone. Q&A, there we go. Perfect. So we'll roll that down. Welcome and much gratitude and appreciation to everyone again for joining us. As this is likely to be the last of the 4 webinars, we actually only started doing one because I don't know if you know the backstory is, but I actually hunted Jace down after listening to the Pete Evans podcast, and I am a wellness coach myself, and I had so many people who were pouring out their hearts to me just in real despair, I guess that's the word I would say. And I know a lot of the people that even did that are wellness coaches or in the industry. So, it gives you an idea of the level of pain people are experiencing, especially down here in Victoria and in Melbourne. But before we kick off, I just want to acknowledge Laura from the Quantum Movement. She's done a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes. And I spoke to her in detail a couple of times. That once she mentioned her skill set, and she's actually got an impressive resume put together there, just as good as Jason's, I think. So I just wanted to acknowledge her for all her work and thank her for pulling these together, because nothing ever just happens. So thank you, Laura. Appreciate that. And most of you know, if you don't know, but Jason and I don't actually rehearse for this. It's mostly off the cuff. I do have some notes beside me which I refer to from time to time, but by and large we just call it as it is and we'll talk through it. But I do feel drawn to say this now, and especially in light of what's been happening down here in Victoria. It's been I don't know how well, we've got a few Victorians, but it's been a pretty big day, a lot of stuff coming through, and you can really feel the momentum and the shift. And I will say that as good as Jace is, using a Tony Robbins term, he's not your guru, he's not my guru. I think we both agree, and maybe I'm speaking on behalf of you, mate, that You are your own guru. That's your job. You're just as important as Jason is, or anyone that you may hold in that same light. You are incredibly powerful people. Jace does what he does. You need to do what you do. You know, I make a habit of, when I coach people, is making sure they try not to look at people like they're bigger, better, faster, or even smarter. You know, all people can rise, and we all rise at different levels for different things. Not everybody's going to do the work that Jason does, but we're all part of a very important chain here. You know, we're not all here to do the same thing, because in my opinion, that would make life pretty boring. So, you know, do your thing, go find it. And let's also, and we've said it a couple of times, but let's not forget that this hasn't been 7 months in the making. This has been years in the making. And Jason has spoken to this a few times, even on these webinars and different ones. And it's something that and I'll use the word because I heard it with him last night with on a webinar, but we've kind of become apathetic because we love our bubble, and we don't want that disrupted. And you know what? That's okay, because life has mainly been uninterrupted for us here in Australia. But it's just not Victoria. It is Queensland. You know, we're now seeing that you can have sex parties, but you can't dance at your wedding. So there's some really weird and terrible stuff that is going down across the nation. And it's not just here, it's also globally we're seeing it. But there is a big rise and a really good momentum coming through. So may this be the reason to step up and do the work and not rely on someone else for the solutions, because they really do come from you. We've all got our part to play in this. I'd also say that if you can, try and release the ego. And ego can be the old beating the chest, but it can also be the inferior part of you as well. Just do in your heart what you know is right. Your heart will tell you. Just, you know, roll with it, feel into it. I feel that we've just sat back and blindly trusted, you know, that old Aussie saying, she'll be right, mate, it'll be okay. And so I ask, you know, is everything okay? Is everything okay now? I think today is, are you okay day? And I really do think when we stop and think about it, is everything okay? And the answer for me is no, it's not. And then I ask myself the question, what am I going to do about it? And I've been working tirelessly on this for about 7 or 8 months now, and I will continue to do everything that I do behind these webinars to try and enact real change, not just change as Jason says for the now, but beyond this, but really about significant change to the political system, because that's where it is. We could lose Andrews and they'll put another snake on the head. We've got to fundamentally fix what we've allowed to be broken. And there's going to be people that will fight to keep lockdowns going, because that is what they truly believe. And, you know, power to them. You know, I don't agree with it, but power to them. I'm not going to criticise them or on any part of it. And I just don't want to politicise tonight. So if I do, I'm pretty emotional today because there's a lot of good stuff coming out today. Then I will apologise if I offend anyone up front. So tonight we're talking about something that's been an unsung subject for a very long time. And I know Naomi is online and Donna. So I've worked with a couple of people before. It pops its head up at the most inconvenienced times, tonight's subject, and we'll cover it in a minute. And it loves to fill our head with seeds of self-doubt. For me, it feels like it's been there since I was a little kid. So tonight's discussion is about expressing your truth without losing your friends. And we will ask again, please ask anything you like. And last week was fantastic. The feedback was awesome. Thanks to Lionel and Donald for agreeing to be on the open mic and share. That was wonderful, and we appreciated that. But like Jason and I said from day one when we did the first webinar, our purpose is to hopefully provide more information, or Jason's anyway, that helps expand awareness and adds something to your life. Like it could just be a small nugget. Take it, do it. You know, that's really it. We're not here to sell you anything. We're here because we want to be here to help human beings. And I think it comes from such a great place. So we're not doing it for us, and we do encourage you to reach out, talk, speak, and just ask away. You know, no question. The old thing, no question is a silly question. Just ask. I mean, when I spoke to Jason the first time, I was on the phone for about an hour because he'll go, you know what I mean? I'm going, actually, I don't fucking know what you mean. I don't get it. So just ask away. So before we kick off, I want to quote. I love to quote, and I want to quote Newton's third law of motion, which is, and it's pretty apparent for today: all forces occur in pairs, such that if one object exerts force on another object, then the second object exerts an equal and opposite reaction force on the first. And I think Kate, one of my friends, Kate, said something very, very similar. And you know what? That is just happening right now in Victoria. I'm leading with this right now because I think things in Victoria and Australia are getting to a tipping point if they're not there already. And people, and many people have become activated And it's my view that when you oppress that many people, something's got to give. And Daniel Andrews and Brett Sutton have done that. They've put this oppression. We've allowed it. In fairness, we've allowed it, but they have put it. So you cannot put that much dark energy and not expect something back. And we are seeing it all around the globe as well. We saw the protests last weekend. I was going to say what a week it's been, but it feels more like, every day so much information is just coming through. And I suspect it's not going to stop now until the damn wall starts to break. And when it breaks, we're going to see people get thrown under the bus to save themselves. And that's typically what will happen in politics. We've all lived through that. But what we are seeing is a reaction overload everywhere. And whether you're for this or against it, we'll park that, but there is reaction overload everywhere. We've heard police threaten to pull their gun out on a resident in, I don't know which suburb, western suburbs, for putting his bin out after 8 o'clock. A pregnant mother handcuffed in her own home for organising a peaceful protest, and according to the police commissioner, the handcuffs are a judgment call to be used when the police believe there's an imminent threat. You can be the judge of that video and make up your own mind if that's an imminent threat or not. We've seen non-mainstream media journalists being thrown to the ground and arrested where mainstream mainstream media journalists, they're definitely not. They're just simply doing their bit. Yet I did see an off video or an off camera roll the other night where the Channel 9 and 7 reporters are actually quite pissed about what's going on. But of course, that won't fit the 6 o'clock narrative, and it didn't. It was different change. And today we've seen Sutton's Andrew and the police commissioner, who we haven't heard from for a while, at conflicts about the curfew and the lies that have come from that, and the lies they continue to push out. So we are seeing the changes everywhere, the falsification of death numbers, now they're reclassifying. And this is just in one day. This is not a week, it's not a month. You add that to 7 months and you can paint your own version of what's going on. So I guess my point about Newton's law is that Andrews and Sutton cannot do this without expecting something to happen back. And you know what, it really is happening. So anyway, I just wanted to share that just put it out there to start tonight. If you're anything like me, then you may not have had the courage to ever speak your truth. That may come as a surprise to those people that know me, especially down here in Victoria in the last 16 years. However, if you are anything like me, then, people, when I was a bit of a bogan living in Redcliffe up in Brizzy, people who took time to educate themselves, because I was, I barely graduated kindergarten. So I had friends that were highly qualified, and I used to think of them as new age wankers that knew too much, They were the people who went to the Ivy League schools, and, I was repeating preschool for the 10th time. They were the privileged kids that had the backing of their parents, and I was out there scrapping out a net session or kicking the footy with an 80-year-old neighbour just so I can get a net session in because, I just didn't have the money. I was just, that just wasn't me at the time. And I guess the other thing I would add to that is, we've all been to, if you have worked in corporate, you'll probably attended a CEO briefing where the CEO, she may get up there, or he, we'll call her she for the moment, and she'll deliver her key messages. And then she'll put a question out to the quorum. Now, I'm not sure if it's happened to anyone, but it's certainly happened to me on many a times where you are briefed before the CEO speaks and you are asked, can you ask this, or will you ask this question? Call it seeding, call it whatever you like. And I was one of them on more than one occasions. I don't know if I felt more fake asking the question or it being an indictment of my character that I was an easy target to ask the question. But I can assure you there was no follow-up to the question from me, because when you're asking on behalf of someone else, you can never respond with integrity because you never owned it in the first place. So for me, discretion certainly was the better part of valor. It was just the easiest way forward. Better to shut up and pretend you knew too much than fear what people might think or say. But of course, those people weren't all that, by the way. They were fantastic people. They were beautiful people, and my friends in Brisbane are wonderful human beings. Anyway, it's about expressing your truth. So, Jace, I know you've been very busy, mate. I've seen your handsome mug on many webinars this week. You've certainly got yourself around the globe. I saw one from the UK as well, with many prominent people and credible sources. You still finding time to breathe, mate?
Yeah, mate. For me, I'm built for this. I love it. It's. I was going to just sort of tap into. I was listening to what you're saying before, and yeah, we're definitely. I suppose it's probably an inconvenient thing to say, but it's a truth that I love what I do, and I don't do it because of anyone else. I do it because of myself. And that's taken me a long time to come to understand that, to realize that I don't do things for the service of others. I do things for myself. And if that happens to be a service to others, well, then that's great, because then I can live in a way that is authentic to me. And I think it's something that we all, should start to look to and aspire to, because it then becomes effortless. I don't ever have no energy for what it is that I'm doing. And I realized a long time in my life of how often I was going through and stressed and trying hard to do things and forcing and pushing, until I realized that, who am I doing this for? Like, who am I getting ready for? Who am I dressing for? Who am I looking to impress? And, it's a really, at times, sometimes arrogant thing to say, that I'm doing this for me. And, I would suggest as a bit of a prediction in life, if that the very elevation of humanity, which is on the table at the moment, is to occur, that one thing will become very true, is that we'll move into a space where independence of the individual and that ability to express themselves is significant. That we don't get caught up in this idea that we're living for someone else's compassion, someone else's needs, someone else's happiness. And that is a very degeneration of our society, which has created us to be in the way that we are at this particular point in time. We avoid tough conversations. We avoid I mean, look, the lovely lady sitting next to you and people that are, dear in my life, are there because I've been able to have deep conversations with them that have been inconvenient at times, that have tested the very metal of that relationship. So to me, we don't need to go through a course to build resilience. We need to provide a court or a concert or an audience for our own weirdness, difference, loose behavior, and be able to do so in observance, to sometimes laugh at it, but to never ever make it wrong. And that's not an easy thing to do, because it's a very lazy thing to do, to talk about how incapable I was or limited I was, or the fact that I was only doing it for you. I mean, these are the very natures of guilt that we need to move beyond and start to find some freedom in our life in a very powerful and significant way. So, I mean, I hope that what comes from this is a lot of inconvenient conversations becoming normalized.
Yeah, nice. I love that, mate. And I think that your first 3 or 4 words there is almost a session within itself, because there is a lot of truth in that. But tonight, because it's our last webinar we've planned, we've scheduled, I just wouldn't mind, and a few people have actually asked me this, which is great. Can you give us maybe a minute update on your life, mate? What makes you tick? Who's Jason? Like, because we really don't know you. I kind of feel like I know you a bit, but I don't even know you that well. So give us a bit of if you can, just a minute, and I'm going to hold you to a minute, because I know you love to talk like I do. Go for it, mate. Just let me know.
Mate, I'm a father. I have an 8-year-old son, a 7-year-old son turning 8 in about 17 days, he tells me. Each day we're counting down, but that's been one of the most significant things in my life. I always thought that I would have 5 or 6 kids, and I find myself now in my mid-40s with one child that is enough for 5 or 6 kids. Is amazing. I've got I live on the Sunshine Coast. I have a extremely supportive partner that probably humbles me in such a way that I don't know how to say this. At times we take things for granted that are most prevalent in our life because they fit so easily, and it's at times to be humble to the very design of the people that do come into your life and why they're there, and to not need to celebrate that from surprise, but to be able to move with it effortlessly. And I'm very lucky to have that in my life. And look, for me, as far as a lifestyle is concerned, I mean, I rarely wear shoes. I'm rarely out of a t-shirt. I used to love being out and about, but one thing I've learned through this particular time and space, the last 7 or 8 months, is I don't miss any of that at all. And I love, from a person that was very self-conscious as a child, and considered in the very nature of my life of whether it was going to continue is I love my own attention now, and I don't say that from a point of anything except for I feel great in being able to say that. So for me, I love the beach, I love nature, and I could happily just lie in nature all day, to be honest.
Wonderful, mate. There is a question there. Thanks for sharing that, mate. That's wonderful. Paul's asked, how old are each of you? Well, I think you gave yours away. You're 40, mid
47.
47. Okay, and I'm 50. What am I, mate? 53, 54, 53. You're telling an old boy. But healthy living, mate. Healthy living, plant powered all the way. So, and a bunch of other things that go with it too. So tonight we're going to have a chat about expressing your truth without losing your friends. And I actually did lose a friend during the week. She opted out of our friendship from some of the stuff that I post. And if anyone ever reads my stuff, I'm quite strong in my beliefs. I never force on anyone. I never say, this is what you should do. It's just the world according to me and my truth based on the research that I do and I discern. So, just keen to hear your initial perspective on that theme, Jace.
I think one of the most important things to understand that we're not meant to have relationships forever. The very foundation of when we go into a relationship is to be present to that. And the very definition for me of a relationship is the current conversation that's happening within that relationship. And it's the very nature of each relationship is only as healthy as its last conversation. We can have a history that allows for certain conversations to be explored further, but a relationship is based on the current conversation. So I believe life is expression. Suppression is not life. And the very aspect of moving into an expression that is not life has to move closer towards death or the denial of your own existence. So when that means that if I was to lose someone because of that can only happen in our lives when we become fulfilled within our own self. And that's the nature of what we're here for, is to become fulfilled, is to become present to our own self and to expand what it is that we have uniquely within us. We're not meant to make the same widget as the next person. We're not meant to dress the same, have the same haircut. We are here to express and expand our differences, but we've fallen into this idea of a society, this word I like to do, romance of community, where we're meant to be working towards something together. Mm-hmm. That is a forced outcome, especially as individuals. If we can't manage our relationship at home, we don't have an example of what it is to be a parent or a partner, to then go out and expect to, at a very high level with so many different factors and aspects, to come together to a community to create a cause beyond our own life. And that's, for most of us, we're trying to escape. It's interesting. There's a saying that goes that if you believe that you've advanced and you've grown in your own life, go and spend a weekend with your parents. Because it's in that particular part that you become confronted with, you can't hide from who you used to be and what you are and the things that you've been holding on to, that they come back and they'll trigger within you. So, it's what we're here to do, I believe, is just to express ourselves. And we can only express ourselves now. We can express ourselves now about what happened in the past. But the only time that we can impact or change the environment around us is in this moment. We complicate that so significantly. And we allow ourselves to get caught up in the consequences of what we might do. That's a complexity. You don't know how someone's going to react, when they react, why they react, and what the cause may be. It's wasted time and energy that we invest into ourselves in order to lead towards a death within us. And that death within us is our own authenticity and our own very nature of why we're here. So if we become obsolete, well, we start to live that way. We start to be in the background. We start to integrate into the shadows of other people. We start to do things that satisfy others because what we are is not required. So it's incumbent upon each of us to be able to navigate our own understanding of ourselves. That can start with questions of, what do I want? that can be stimulated by environments of now is what the fuck's going on in my state? You know, what are these politicians, how did this happen? And questions now where people are starting to understand that we have a constitution is the very nature of this country's existence and what it operates by that is being completely overlooked by every politician in Parliament. I had the fortune of speaking to, look, if people want to follow a great leader in this country, there's two that are popping up at the moment that hopefully they'll be one of the leaders of this country. One of them, his name is Rod Cullerton of the Great Australian Party, and another one is Ricardo Bossi. These two people, what they are presenting and bringing forward gives hope to me from the point of politics. Now, I had the fortune of speaking to one of those men at this particular point, and one thing that he said to me which shocked me, but gave me great insight to what's going on in this country. He was a man off the land who had his farm taken away from him illegally by the banking situation, which is, you don't, I mean, look at 60 Minutes, something called Farmers Fight Back. It was the biggest ever 60 Minutes episode still to this day. And it's about people on the land in an unconscionable way having their farms stripped from them before they defaulted on a loan. I don't want to digress too much, but this is an important aspect to understand some of the positives that are going on around us. But one of the things he said to me after he decided that's enough and he went into the Senate, he had to take an oath, which is what you'd expect. That's a part of becoming a politician in the service of your country. Now there's an oath, and I think it's section 44, whatever it may be, of the Constitution, don't quote me, but it's from recall. He was then approached by the, I don't know the term, but the clerk, let's say, of the Senate, to ask Mr. Cullerton, what oath would you like to swear by? And he said, oh, well, what do you mean? The one in the Constitution. And the description to me was that he sort of stepped back and went, well, what do you mean? He was shocked as to say, well, no one in the Parliament had actually sworn by that. People had written their own, our own Prime Minister. Now, in his own words, it's in his nature is, well, an oath is an oath. Why take an oath, especially at the highest level in the land, and not follow through on it? If you can understand the very nature of what the can of worms that opens up, that people taking Parliament that are there to serve you have the capacity to choose what oath that they will swear to in order of service. And if you can start to understand the corruption that's been under our nose for such a long period of time, it's not about getting the pitchforks out and starting to burn down these people's houses. That's not going to achieve anything. It's only going to remove what's there to bring in the same thing again. What has created it is the condition that exists within us, our own censorship, our own personal corruption, our own ability to stand behind our own requirements and needs and expressions in order to serve someone else's. Now, I had a conversation with a guy that's doing some messaging for us this morning, and he was in a bit of a space of, wanting to serve everyone else. And, there's a big idea in life that, well, what do you want to do? I just want to help others. It sounds like a very noble cause. Maybe it's the most absent cause.
Explain that.
Well, if I would suggest to anyone that exists that's here listening or listens beyond this, if you could go into your community and get 1%, and I mean 1% of the people, and this is a sad statistic, but 1% of the people that are absolutely clarified and clear on what it is that they want that is going to fulfill them in their life. 1%. Now, the sad thing is, if you bring attention to this, you'll know what the answer is already. Now, think of the charade that happens in saying that I want to help other people. It's an impossible situation because people don't know what they want. And even if they did, you providing it would be impossible because everyone's would be different. It is impossible to do so. But we go into this idea, well, that sounds like a great idea, and it's impressive to others. It'll cause people to get off my back because the very nature of my noble cause that I want to do is help others. We need to own the fact that we are here to bring about our own prosperity. And when we do that, we become engaged in it, we allow and provide examples for others, so we bring freedoms that we have not had. When we are most fulfilled in our own selves and most independent, we bring about a community by default, not by force. People that feel guilty to come into a community to do right by others, they don't create. They argue. They look for attention in ways that don't. And we all know in our own lives, we've been part of, community groups. I know my own self where you have a board of a community group and the people that are generally running it, sadly, don't have an understanding of what it is to manage people, what it is that people want, and recognizing at times the absence that's there. And this is part of the responsibility that we need to take. We want freedom. We just have to become present to what we are, not who we are. And the irony is that this is really simple. And the simplicity of it starts with just wanting to be alone with yourself. And that again is a challenge. So we've got to then consider, what is it that we are cultivating? What is it that we are putting in the soil beneath our feet in order to assume or grow for benefit? I do some work, and it's something I want to get more into, with the fathers of this country. And one of the things that we do.
Are you referring Indigenous fathers?
No, I mean colloquially, like men,
okay.
fathers, also mothers, but it's been more focused around fathers because of especially the nature of suicide has been more focused in men. And I identified something that I believe to be true is, I questioned years ago is why we don't have generational wisdom passed on, because me growing up, I wanted that. I wanted someone to, you watch a movie of some, like Mr. Miyagi coming along and taking young Daniel's son and teaching him this wisdom. I was like, oh, no, I'd love that, and other examples that I would get exposed to that really resonated with me. Why wasn't that happening? Now, one thing I come to understand, it wasn't that process wasn't there, that there was a greater crime that was happening. And it was in the doing of it. Generational wisdom would require an individual in their own life to look at their life and bring a default level of accountability to what it is that they're creating and doing in each moment. Because let's just say it's a simple thing like a meal. I'm not going to cook you a meal that looks like crap and hand it to you. If I have pride in who I am, I'm going to do my best. And if I don't meet up to standard, I'll have a whole range of excuses to facilitate giving it to you as why it's not as good as what it could be. But my intention is to deliver something to you complete. So if I was to go about creating generational wisdom to the audience of my offspring or those most close to me around me, I would have to consider, what is it in my life that is valuable to share? What is it that I understand? What is it that's worthy to teach and pass on? I might be confronted in my life by something very significant, for example, that I don't have anything to share, that I don't know what I would share and bring to another person's life in order to enliven them, which then gives me the opportunity to ask deeper and become more present to that. And that requires a resilience and an accountability to discover what it is that enlivens each and every one of us. We've become acquiesced into a particular place where we accept what we just need to do just to get by. And for me, I don't entertain that. I don't intend to make...
Sorry, mate, to cut you off. Is part of that, well, A, you're not expressing your truth in that regard, and B, you're probably not losing your friends because they're probably just happy you're staying who you are.
Sorry, say that again. It just cut out a little bit.
No, you're right. So it's, for me, it's essentially you're probably not expressing your truth anyway, and you're not losing your friends because you're not changing. You're not actually committing to you being the best you can.
Absolutely. And it's, and that to me is, I think we've spoken about this before, that's the real sin of life. That's the deceit that we live with, that we convince ourselves when we don't want to put ourselves out there that we're probably not good enough at that we probably need to study.
Sorry, mate, can you explain that? Because that was such a pertinent point to me when I heard that on one of your webinars about the light and the sin of light. Can you just explain to the people? Because I think it was well worth hearing again.
Yeah, I'll do the best with it. we've been convinced that we need to move towards the light, which is good, theoretically. We are the light. We are the emanation of our own existence. To move into the light is to move into what is already known, to what is already seen, to what is already present. That is not life, that is a degeneration of life. What we are here to do is to move into the unknown, to elicit ourselves into a place that we have not been. In order to move forward and to grow, requires us to go where we have not been. What we do is this light that we have is there to allow ourselves to liberate the darkness, to provide example to others in our ability to become all that we are. And when we deny that and we continue to keep doing the same thing over and over again and doing what is familiar, treading the same path, we become bored. We get to the end of our life and we wonder, what have we done with our lives? What has this existence been for? We see this, you know, on a day where suicide has been there, when we see the tragedy of something like suicide and we realize what that person is now going to miss. That they don't, they're off somewhere else. But we start to look in our life as to what is now going to be missed. But do we take that within our own self to recognize, well, what would I miss if I wasn't here? What is it that I do not want to leave behind? What is it that I could not live without beyond here? And then do I become accountable to actually changing and putting attention into that? Or do I continue to keep telling myself that I have to do these things? I don't have time for that. These are important. Do I allow the things around me that I love to die before I decide to value them to a great level of significance? We need to stop having compassionate and kind conversations that allows people to become complacent to that particular point, that they live their life losing the very fabric and the blossom that exists all around them. It's not an easy conversation to have. It's not something that people like to hear at times. But it is essential to understand that when we move through tragedy and grief in our life is our ability to come to accept what exists. And if we don't focus our attention into it, we never will. We will always be, well, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to go into that. But it's our nature to move through something. We have experiences in our life where the most joyous things in our life seem to go in an instant. It's like, it came and it's like, wow, that's amazing. Because in contrast to that, pain seems to hang around forever. It just won't go away. When we're in a situation that is mentally painful compared to physically painful, the same thing. It seems to just drag out tick by tock by tick by tock. But that moment of engagement in life, it's gone in an instant. Everything is available to us if we just look and we give an example as to how to move past that. So, for example, if we embrace life and we become fully present to it and it moves quickly, well, what about if we embrace pain? Not that it's easy to do, but we embrace those things that are a discomfort or a shameful or guilt in our life. What if we embrace them? Not for the purpose of saying this is great, but when we embrace something, we become present to it. And at that particular point, we can start to understand it and move through it. If we don't embrace it, it will continue to keep existing in our life until we come to understand it to a point of integration, where it's not an interruption to our life, it's a presence within our life that doesn't distract us. It is just a part of us, which is what it's always been. So our ability to embrace life is also relevant to our ability to embrace ourselves and to recognize we're going to screw up, we're going to fall over, we're going to be clumsy, we're going to say some stupid things, and we're going to wake up in the morning and go, what the hell did I say? Why did I do that? What am I thinking? I mean, I do it now. Today I said something that I suppose allowed me to be embarrassed with myself, and I said it out loud, but it was ridiculous. As soon as I said it out loud, it was just gone. But we all do it. We're not free from it. We're not getting to a destination or a point in our place where we're putting ourselves into a point where we don't feel pain anymore. We feel pain all the time, but we just allow ourselves to move further through it. It's the movement through life. And just consider pain is relevant to standing still. Everything around us is moving at different rates, at different points, at different levels of obviousness. And depending upon our perception with our eyes, if that's our only form of perception, well, we're going to find it difficult to see the movement. But if we develop our noble senses, like our intuition and our imagination, and if, you know, people want to research and look back at documents and literature before the 19th century, you'll find the seven senses are referred to quite regularly in the right documentation, not as a mystery, but as a matter of fact. It's not a new discovery, it's just the way it is. And the thing is, we have imagination and intuition in our own life. But isn't it interesting that imagination has been coupled with being a daydreamer? That, you know, it's something that kids play with rather than adults master. It's interesting that we become called adults, which is to be adulted, to be toxified, to be indoctrinated, rather than to be people, a man and a woman. To express ourselves. And look, the very nature of what we're looking at here is, you know, finding a presence within our own self that we want to share with others, and to not complicate that.
So let's just break it down a bit if we can. That was very enlightening. But if we looked at the subject again, so it's expressing your truth without losing friends. So I think I understand what expressing the truth truly means for me, and I guess only I can. And I'll just give you the example. During the week, and so again, those that follow me or read any of my stuff, I am very much all about the data. I'm all about the facts, and sometimes I don't validate everything, but by and large, I do. And I had a friend, she called me out on one point, and for the life of me, what was it? I was talking about the deaths in COVID. Now that, you know, the US has come out and said only 6% of all their deaths actually die from COVID, so 12,000 out of 195. The others died with comorbidities and COVID. And then the UK has come out now, and I'm Italian, so my family over there, they laugh at what's going on with the death numbers, because the all-cause mortality hasn't gone up. It's gone down year on year. So, you know, COVID is just like, for them, COVID is just like any other flu. You take care, and it's a virus, we understand that, and you do a bunch of stuff to do it. But it's not this big, hideous disease that has shut down the world, when there's been the same but different viruses that we've never done this for. And if, again, all my facts are about, I don't want to go on about too long, but I've done all-cause mortality for Sweden. You know, I copped a lot of crap about Sweden, thinking that herd immunity would work. It got to a point where their deaths got stuck at 5,800. And, you know, the person said to me, well, that's 4,000 more, that's 4,000 deaths, you know. And I said, well, no, you've got to look at the lull. So in 2019, Sweden didn't have many deaths because not many people died from the flu. But the following year, this year in COVID, they did. So their time was up, they were older, you know, and that's sad. And one life is too many. My dad's 86, you know, he gets around northern Italy and he doesn't wear a mask, but he's very careful. But I expressed my views strongly. And then there was one about the COVID deaths. And I said, well, Victoria's now downgraded their numbers to 9% who died only from COVID. And she was really, really pissed off with me. And like, you prove that, you got no right saying that our governments and health officials wouldn't lie to me. I'm going, look, I'm not telling you to believe me. I'm just saying I saw it. And she basically demanded me to show her the evidence. And I said, well, it was on a mate's phone. I think Channel 7 Sunrise, go do it, you know. And then, yeah, well, you're full of shit, basically. And then, bang, about 4 hours later, Sky News came out with the actual report. So I forwarded that to her, and then she defriended me. And that was the end of it. No conversation spoke. So I guess in the context of the question, I don't think I ever said to her, this is what you should believe, but this is my truth based on what I found, because I think this is a significant enough issue. How else could I have done that differently? Because, you know, essentially I've spoken my truth, but I've lost my friend.
Yeah. Here's a bit of a rule of life that I look at, and again, in the keeping the simplicity of it, is it's perfect the way it happened, because that's how it happened.
So exposed her pain?
Sorry?
Exposed her pain? Is that what you meant?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even go into that particular part. It's about resolving that within you, and stop looking outside of yourself to go into yourself and go, well, how do I actually feel about it? You know, am I discomfort for this? it's not about looking to her and looking to medicate in that particular way, but looking to yourself to go, well, how do I feel about this? And if I feel about this in a way that is making me uncomfortable, deal with the discomfort, not trying to reconcile the conversation or the relationship. Deal with what comes up and the response within you first. Once that's resolved and you're in a state of calm and you're in a state of this moment, it's that particular part in your life that then you can decide, well, do I want that relationship? But the problem is when people lose a friend or these types of things, because they don't get back to a state of calm, and they're feeling anxious and that they do things that they end up regretting later and continue this cycle of disconcerting, unhealthy relationships. So it's to recognize it. It's kind of, when you're driving along in your car and a red light comes on the dashboard, you don't start screaming and shouting at the red light and getting pissed off with it because there's a red light. It's an indication of some action that needs to be taken. You don't, in that particular part, start dealing with the symptoms of what caused the light to go on. Why is that happening? You become aware of what the light represents. In the same in our own life, when we start to have pain and problems that are going on, or we start to feel sad or angry or dissatisfied, to try and actually stop the reason or address the reason why we are sad or why we're dissatisfied is the problem. What we need to look at is how we get calm. If I'm feeling sad, if I'm feeling unhappy, stop trying to fix the reason why you think or blame the person that's created that. Just recognize that what I'm experiencing is just an indication that I am not currently at ease with myself. Keep it simple. All I need to do is to get back to a state of ease. The problem is that people go, oh, I'm too busy. I don't have time to deal with that right now. I've just got to get this done. Rather than stopping and indulging themselves to go, you know what? I'm basically, consider this, doesn't matter if your house is on fire, doesn't matter if there's, death at our door. You wouldn't run out of your house naked. Most people anyway. They would find a sheet, a curtain, or whatever it is to, conceal themselves because of their own vanity that comes with that and conditioning. But the thing is, we do not prepare ourselves for life from a deep state of connection within ourselves each and every day, in each and every moment. We allow ourselves to walk naked into life, expecting ourselves to be received as if we weren't. We then blame the people around us for looking at us and ogling us while we're naked.
Yeah.
Rather than recognizing, I'm not currently present to my own space at this point. And when we can recognize that, we take the pressure off ourselves trying to fix the world's problems and everyone else's problems and reconcile why they need to be nicer or better to me. What we do instead is we start with, all I need to do is to get into a state of ease. So how do I do that? What are the steps that I take so I can remember? Because here's the trick. If you understand how to get to ease, well, you welcome being in dis-ease. You welcome identifying it because you already know what to do.
Yeah.
People won't accept that they're in a state of dis-ease or discomfort in their life if they don't know how to address it. If you know how to, any issue that's existing in life, when you become very good at something, you also become very good at identifying where that is so you can express that, so you can demonstrate that. So when you become very good at your life about, overcoming your beliefs, well, you then become happy to see that you've got these dark, sinister beliefs in your life. Look, I had to come to my own reconciliation that I had some really bad beliefs about women. About 15 years ago, I didn't want to accept that. That wasn't me. No. And when I came into my own truth and understanding and asked, what is it that was causing this in my life? And I became present to a whole range of beliefs that I would have never associated with my own self. I had to actually stop and listen and take action to move beyond it. But I had to accept it before I was able to change it. But I only was able to do that because I developed a skill to be able to remove the beliefs that I had that were inhibiting me, that were confusions and deceits in my own life. So if we can develop things in our own life, not to be better or it's just about consistently getting to a state of ease, because then we can continue to keep creating. And we always create best. And some people might say that they create best from oppression, from challenge. That's not creation. That's a temporary change. But to create something that's sustained and long-term must come from a state of calm and ease. The greatest artists that are maintained, that are deliberate in what they do so because they understand that what it is, they are completely predisposed to what it is they're creating. So it's in our own experience, in our own life, to be able to do the same. We don't need to fix anything. We just need to come back to ease. The things that are happening around us are not problems. They're just indications of where we are not currently maintaining. And to understand when we're growing and developing and a greater responsibility and more is coming into our life, we just need to reconcile that we're now responsible for more things, because this is what we wanted. We wanted a more expansive life.
Yeah.
So there's now more things to be responsible for, but a part of that is also taking the responsibilities and obligations we had previously and letting them go. And we have to negotiate with ourselves, will that still get done? Will someone be able to do that? Am I leaving someone out here? Am I doing the wrong thing? As we move into a place of greater prosperity. That's a challenge, and we're going to understand that at times we can't keep using the same tools and techniques and approach to life that we did previously if we want to engage in something of greater expansion and prosperity, because there's now more and a greater responsibility, and it's always available to us. When we create a foundation of our own understanding, that I'm not sure if we went through this the other week, but the pyramid itself, as an example, the strength of the foundation of the pyramid and the width of the foundation of the pyramid determines the height of the pyramid. Ascension is determined by foundation. So the greater the understanding that we have of ourselves, the more we can express that, the more we can engage in what exists around us. But for most of us, like an example of a pyramid, we're too focused on what it looks like to be at the top of it. And what we're not allowing ourselves to do, because if we want to have an impact in our life, if we just continue to keep building our own foundation, we'll experience joy, we'll be able to deal with resilience, we'll be able to deal with any pain, we won't get sick. Because the very nature in understanding ourselves is we don't hold on to the toxicities that don't allow us to build a strong foundation. But that foundation is much like, the awesome power of a tsunami. It can be very devastating. But if that tsunami had an equal structure around it, that tsunami and the power of it would be maintained and harbored by a river. Now, a river is much like a puddle unless it has strong structure and walls around it. So it's to come to a point in our own life, and we all do know this if we stop and consider it, our capacities are infinite, they're immeasurable. They talk about measuring space and going off into light years beyond the depths of the sea, the navigation across the land. Some people believe the Earth's flat and round. There's deliberation in all of these areas. But one thing that's still unknown is what exists within us. And to me, that's the greatest irony. Why isn't that the focus of what we learn? And if it's not the focus of what we learn or what we've been presented with, why aren't we most focused on it?
There is a medical term, and I did a bit of epigenetics, and they call it spontaneous remission, where people go into themselves. And I think Dr. Joe Dispenza is a big one of this, and I do like his work. But he's given many examples, cited many examples where people go into their body, and he gives them a few tools and techniques to learn, and they will they'll have a life-threatening disease. They'll be, stage 4 cancer. So metastases everywhere, and the doctors have said, chemo, low dose, high dose, radio, hormone therapy, it's not working. It's just not working. The cancer's come back. Well, the cancer never went. It was always there. So as a last resort, they go to Joe Dispenza, who's a chiropractor, but mind you, chiropractors hold higher qualifications in America than they do in Australia, because they've got to be an MD as well, as I understand. I could be wrong. But he takes them through a process which is all about going within. It's the mind, and it really is about knowing who you are, fundamentally who you are. And there's a bit of acceptance, but they call it spontaneous remission. And many people have come through the other side, and the doctors are just blown away by it. I'm not saying everyone does, because not everyone can reach that level, but it's an interesting.
I would say, Jason, I think everyone can reach that level, and they can reach that level very simply. It's a native state of our own being. We don't need to address or fix any disease or condition. We simply need to maintain a state of integration in the same way that we do in what you're very familiar with fasting and bringing our body into a state of where we allow the environment to correct itself, where we stop interrupting what is going on, where we come to understand it. Because when we can understand it, we can embrace what's going on, we can allow for the release. And that's often what's happening in moments of sickness. I've observed people in just through a writing practice overcoming terminal illnesses. It's about letting go of what we're holding on to most often.
That's a real mind. That's a real mind for people, you know that, don't you?
I know it is, and I know it's challenging for some people to even consider because it might be surrounding trauma and people they've lost, and can't be that easy, and it's not possible. Yeah. And look, this is the thing with truth, is it's not about the miraculous nature of it and the ability for someone to heal. It's about the individual's capacity to be able to receive it. And that's the very nature of our own selves, is what are we not able to receive in our life? What is it that we have got blocking our ability to be able to hear what someone is saying? Because I would suggest, you mentioned before about the ego, a very clear indication of someone being in the ego is when they are listening to someone else, but they respond in opposition to that. Someone who, there's a nature, and I suppose a collaboration of something called the higher self.
Yeah.
You know, the higher self is a concept. And it's an experience that's being created through different philosophies. But the nature of the higher self is having access to all information, that we are imparted with an infinite amount of wisdom at any particular time. Some people call it having access to that, the Akashic records. And the nature of that is to be able to access infinite wisdom over all periods of time, beyond time. The thing is, with all of us, we have that capacity. We are that capacity. We just simply need to come to understand how to navigate and use that. And in our ability to be able to receive information, it's these higher concepts and this access to wisdom that is the one that's consistently asking questions. It's the capacity that I have access to everything and I am available to every bit of intelligence, but I'm still going to ask a question. But it's the ego that knows nothing, but continues to profess that it knows everything. Not wanting to change, wanting to stay exactly where it is. I know this conversation's gone probably a bit deeper than normal or usual, but I feel like there's things happening in Victoria and Australia where I believe the shift has started. And it's about, moving beyond the entertainment to some degree of what's going on around us. And when I say entertainment, I don't mean that it's good. I mean that people are keeping up with what everyone else is doing in their life and what's happening in the world around them.
Yeah.
It has replaced things like stimulations of Netflix and movies and whatever it may be. It's about recognizing, what do I now create beyond this? And I hope that this type of conversation has opened up to some to go, well, what is it that's beyond this? What is it that I want to create? What is it that's different? What is it that I want to look at?
We've got a couple of questions here, mate. We perhaps didn't close out the part about how not to lose friends. So maybe
okay, yeah. I can
quickly talk to that.
Probably just a quick one on that is that we've got to realize, like in every relationship, it's not meant to be held onto and maintained. It's meant to be in equal service to each person. And we need to at times come to understand why it is that at this particular point that's been presented to release and let that go. But this is, to me, where it's so important within our own selves to come to a point of resolving. How do we make decisions? How do we identify whether I chase after that friend or not? But to me, it's all, I got told by a guy, John DeMartini, years ago, he said that he had a law of the law of lesser pisses. And his law of lesser pisses was, if you're ever going to piss someone off, make sure it's not yourself.
Yeah.
And that it's a healthy way of living, because it doesn't matter whether it's your child or whether it's your partner, you can't control their response or their reaction. You can hold space for it. But the thing is, it's about being an example in my eyes to liberate other people to be able to do what it is that they want. And where we become triggered, allowing ourselves to change it.
I like that answer. That resonates with me strongly. I hope it does with others. We're hitting the hour mark. I have a couple of questions here, mate. Firstly, practical tips on, I'm just looking at the Q&A box, practical tips on how you can truly connect within yourself and drop into your heart, still the mind, and connect with inner guidance and what they feel at a deep level without the old monkey mind or the ego overruling.
Yeah, I'll explain a little bit here, but there's a process that I'll share with people that we're doing, as I said at the start, if people weren't here, that we're doing Saturday. It's something we're looking to do ongoing, but that will give you an understanding and a process that you can go through and use each time to come into your own state of awareness. It's simple and it's something that can be used at any particular time. So 9 o'clock on Saturday, and it's there. And if you're not there, you can hear the recording on the live and you can apply it in your own way. But about presence, it's about, first of all, becoming present of the starting point, where I'm existing right now. Our ability to do that is very much driven by our ability to be able to see everything that exists in my environment, good or bad. So our ability to see that and to stop into that particular place is what brings about humility, which is to see things as they are, not as I wish them to be. So there is techniques that people can use around breathing, but to me, breathing it's much simpler than it. And I'd say because we're already breathing and we can improve our breathing and I understand and practice in that. But what I truly believe is that we have become distracted from what we are. We came in peace. We've now learned to not be at peace. One of the most important things is to remove those things is creating the space where you're not peaceful. To bring attention to them, to be able to express them and let them go. A powerful process I think we shared at the start is to simply, and you can go onto our YouTube channel and it's explained there, it's called a simple process or a simple approach. And it's about a writing technique. It's getting a pen and paper and sitting for a period of time and allowing yourself to become present to your shames and guilts and releasing them, because they are the inhibitor, they are the blocker that stops you being at peace. We don't need to force ourselves from a top place of toxicity to come at peace because it's temporary. We have to keep working at it. But if we can remove the things that don't allow that to be natural and native in our environment, we don't have to work at it. We just come to experience and express it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that that is also, significant, get in nature. Get in nature. Look at and become present to, and be as weird to stand there and just feel a tree. Put your hands,
Sorry, I think with this question, I actually know the context, and I think they were in nature, the couple. They came back to a reality, and old mate got with his buddies, and then he felt the draw of being pulled back here rather than looking at potentially what was 12 months, their plans for the next 12 months was to do more of the same, like get out there, explore Queensland, jump around the state. But as soon as they got back from their 6-week trial, it was a matter of him going back to his mates and his mates going, no, you can't be doing that. And then, so the monkey mind, their voices were inside him and his monkey mind was taken over.
Yeah, I think that the monkey mind itself, and a lot of people speak to it, there's a really, as I was saying before, powerful thing to write that stuff out, because just imagine that those voices in your head that continue to keep rotating and they get louder and another one adds to it. It's like more and more people take up residence in your head.
Yeah.
They continue to keep doing that and getting louder and taking more of your attention until you give them your attention. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do what they're saying, but like a child or like a friend or like a person that comes to you and they continue to keep wanting your attention, when you stop and actually give them attention, acknowledge what it is, they are then complete and they move away. They go and do what they're doing. They become engaged in their life. Now, if you can stop and listen to those particular things just to acknowledge them, just consider when you, just a simple practice, like when you walk into a restaurant and you've taken some friends there because you want to impress them because it's a great restaurant and you really like it and you want to have a good night. And you walk into this restaurant talking about how great it is, the service brilliant, and you walk in. Just consider how much more heightened you are of making sure that everything goes perfect. That when you walk in the door, if that person, the maitre d' or whatever, is not coming over to you immediately or acknowledging you, you start to get more agitated. And it's what the pressure you're placing upon yourself that creates that. And at the same time, all it takes is for one person who's walking around that room just to lift an eyebrow and acknowledge you. They don't have to come and sing happy birthday to you or welcome you in or put the red carpet out. They just need to acknowledge it, and then everything of your expectations drops.
Yeah.
Now, it's the same thing within our own self. If you're not acknowledging what's going on within you, it's going to get more agitated. It's a part of you. It's something that's unresolved, incomplete in our life. And if you want to have and maintain silence, is look at all the areas in your life of the things that you have that are incomplete. The things that you started or said that you would do, the promises you made that you didn't follow through on, that are still active right now. And I mean to the extent when you say to a friend, oh, let's go catch up for coffee. If you commit to that, but then you don't do it, for some people, it can get to a point where 8 or 9 weeks later, oh, geez, I still haven't called John. I've got to call him. And that little comment has now become a problem. And now you actually need to call him because you need something from him. And it's too hard to do that now because now you're only calling because you need something, but you haven't had the, blah, blah, blah. We create all these issues within our own selves that are incomplete. And this goes back to, a simplicity of our graceful ability to say no. And grace is such an important thing in our own life, and it's us being at peace with our own expression. There's something I also speak to is graceful intolerance. We need to gracefully be intolerant of things that don't serve us, which might be this current condition, which might be what someone else has to say or present or inflict upon us. We don't need to get a bat out and smack them over the head. It's not going to achieve anything.
Sorry, just on that, there's a Larkin Rose has a very good video out about how to wake people up, and it's, if you get a chance, just Larken, Larkin Rose, I think. He's a bloke YouTube. You might find him on BitChute because I think YouTube censored him a couple of times. Not that he's that. Anyway, I don't know why they would censor him, to be honest. His content's fine, but that's YouTube. If you have a look at that, and you'll see about what his view is about how to wake people up, and it's a very interesting concept in and around that of itself. It's similar lines to what you're saying there, Jace.
Yeah. Look, the most important part of silence is understanding why I'm doing it. If you're doing it to escape where you are, you'll find it very difficult to find silence. But it's very easy to have silence in our life when we're fulfilled and when we're doing things that enable us in a very significant way. That silence becomes revered and it becomes required, not an escape, not an excuse, not an indulgence. But it can also come by habit. And make a ceremony of it each day where you do go to a particular place and sit just with yourself. Just become, if it's something that you just started to do, just become present to your own breath. Don't try to breathe in a particular, just become present to it. Allow the thoughts that come in to come and to go, to come and to go. It's like a person giving up smoking that has, I really need to smoke a cigarette. If they just allow that thought to come and release, and come and release, eventually that particular thought doesn't come back because it has now a fluidity and a consistency of how it's dealt with. So it doesn't need your attention because it knows now, having this thought, what do I do with it? Previously, what I've done is I've grabbed a cigarette and I've smoked it and I've jumped away and thought of the next one. And that's what I've done. There's my habit. But now I've made a decision to not do that. It now becomes apparent to me, well, I'm not used to saying no to this particular thing. So I now have to make this decision not once, but a many amount of times until such time that it no longer requires my attention in order to find its own level of organization. that thought's still there about the cigarette, but
Yeah.
I'm just not responding to it in the same way that I used to. So our silence is very much determined not by where we hold our fingers. It's not determined by the breath that we take. It's not determined by, the mountain upon which we sit. Our silence is determined by our ability to fulfill ourselves by choosing consistently and by habit what it is that we want to do. Because look into your life, you always have time to do the things that you have to and should that have become obligations. The stuff that you don't want to do in your life, but you have to. It's amazing how we've always got time for that, but we don't have time to do the things we love. So it's a matter of, not that we don't have time, we don't make time. I would suggest to anyone that when you start to, it's like the idea of getting money and think, I'm going to save some money, and you go and spend it and then you save what you've got left. That never works.
Yeah.
You have to put it away before you start spending it in priority of yourself. There's principles that exist within that, and the same within our own attention. We need to give attention to ourselves first, which enables it to become valuable to others, which enables us to have presence with other people because we are giving attention to us. We're the example of where we want to put our attention. And when we can do that consistently and regularly, silence becomes something that we reward ourselves with and becomes a normal and natural part of life because we've been engaged. But if we're not engaged with ourselves each and every day, we can't. And we won't have silence, because when we do actually finally get our attention, it's like we've been ignored all day and we just hear chatter, 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 because we haven't been giving ourselves attention. You give yourself attention, you give yourself awareness, you act upon at least once per day to do something that's self-indulgent, that comes to you in a moment of crazy silence. I mean, look, I have to, not that this is a point of advice, I remember when I was first learning to become present to my own voice and intelligence. And I'm highly skeptical as an individual, which means that I need to not accept things immediately. I want to get to a point where it is absolute. I don't want things to work occasionally. And it's the way I design what I do in life. It has to work all the time. And simply, ideally. So I remember getting this message coming through to me, which just seemed crazy and illogical and ridiculous, which was I needed to go and dance down on the local street for a half an hour. Now, I was caught up in my own thinking and logic, and I was trying to create a business, and it was just, it was all there. I got this information. I'm like, that's freaking ridiculous. I'm not doing that. And anyway, the more time I put into what I was doing, it just wasn't working and things were falling apart. And it seemed crazy. And I came from, science and from business consulting and those types of things where there's logical, there's processes, there was ways to drive. Anyway, I eventually surrendered into it. And the change that created in me, I can't measure, because it was surrendering into myself. It was like me proposing to myself and accepting the proposal. I accepted a commitment to myself. And it's that particular thing that I learned more than anything that brings silence, not in a place of nothingness, but in a place of harmony between what I am, my actions and my thoughts, and my existence within life.
Did you seek a point of validation during that process?
How do you mean?
Did you need to go external to yourself to validate that this was the right way forward?
Well, what I would suggest to everyone is that the greatest wisdom is always available to you. It's not that it's not there, it's just whether we're listening or not. And a further factor beyond that is, I just want to consider the truth in it, is that when we are seeking wisdom from our own self or from anyone, that wisdom is only determined by the trust that we have in it. So if we are not predisposed to taking action before we receive the information, we're going to receive information that we're not going to act upon, exactly as we requested. So what it is, how do I get to a point of trusting the very source of the information that I have access to? That's not easy, but I would say that's a very noble thing to learn and to understand, because it takes a significant amount of courage. It's very easy to listen to other people, what they've done, what they've proven, what they've written in a book. to get other people to come into concert with you to say, yeah, this is great, this is the right way, you've got to do that.
My sister is a carer for my mum, who's a 79-year-old Scottish woman from Dunfermline. Anyway, she suffers really bad dementia, mum. So it's quite tragic with her, the way her life rolled out, but all of her own doing to a degree. But my sister has been an incredible strength to look after mum. They live in Ango at the moment, up in the South Burnett. So I've often said, bring her down Victoria, we'll take her down here in Geelong, happy to bring her on, but mum wouldn't go. And it's got to a point where we had a conversation yesterday where Serena, my sister, had said to me, I'm thinking about putting mum in a home, she's just not happy. Because dementia has some pretty cruel side effects that roll with it. And she said, what do you think I should do? And I said, well, what do you think you should do? And, so she sort of explained everything again. And she said, look, I just need to, have I got you on board? I said, it doesn't matter if you got me on board. You've been the carer for 20 years. You've just built a story up and you've told me exactly how you feel. How does that sit with you? And her daughter, my niece, who's 32, was in the car with her, and I love my niece to death. She's an amazing woman. She just said, yes, mum, what do you think you should do? So, the answer is we're going to put her into a home. It's not where mum would want to go. She won't remember it, but we know it is for the best. And it was all about trusting that inner voice. She sat with it forever. Like she sat with this for about living at Redcliffe when they were living there for 5, 6, 7 years when the dementia first kicked in. But she never acted on it. And now it's got to the point where she's decided it's the truth. I will act on it. Tough decision, mind you, also.
Yeah, it's so challenging because it makes us realize at times where our authority is in our life and who we're allowing to be in judgment from. Like when we're making a decision like that, if we know our own heart and we're making a decision from that particular place, we don't need to negotiate that with anyone else. We realize that once we've made that decision, some other people might think it's the craziest thing because of their own pain or perspective that's going on in their life. But we almost realize that making a decision these days has become a very rare practice. We are where we are at this particular point where we're making decisions based upon all the options of it. And just consider, in our own life, we've got infinite options, but when we first have an idea or an insight, there's no doors closed on how we can express that and do that. But in every moment we choose not to move into this great new idea, doors close. It's not the right season, it's not the right time. We've got to wait, I've got to practice, I've got to learn more. And eventually we get to a point where we have to act. And that's what we've become used to at times now, of acting because we have to, rather than because what we choose to and want to, taking full responsibility and ownership. So it's why that when we do make decisions, eventually we have no potency in those decisions because we're acting with a marginal amount that's left. When we have the audacity and the courage to act in that inspiration to begin with, we wield significant power in our life. We build inspiration. We drive people towards us because we create an enthusiasm. We allow, like entheos, which is the Greek God for enthusiasm, to bring. Enthusiasm is the very nature of the word is the God within. And that is what we bring through us when we enable ourselves to make a decision without the expectation of getting it wrong. It's exceptionally important to be able to understand that within our own self, that, to discover and to explore that. And I think that's, like what you're saying with those questions, humble ourselves at times to look to see, if I was to make a decision, or when I am making decisions, who are the images, who are the people I've got in my head? Because if it's not yourself, you start to live a life and start to become very present. It's a way of becoming very aware of where it is that you're compromised in your own life. Because we should never be making a decision for our partner, for our kids, for anyone. It should be making that decision for us in the consideration of our life includes them. But when we make a decision for someone else, we're excluding ourselves. When we're making a decision for our own self and what it is that we've become, yes, our partner is a part of it. Our child is a part of that. And the life that we live is a part of it. But when we start to exclude ourselves is when we start to find shame, difficulty, tiredness, and we start to find a life that we don't want.
I do a bit of health coaching still, and I've got a 274-page manual that that I pulled together, and I don't know if Donna's on the line still, but we studied at the same place, integrated nutrition, and I took a bunch of their stuff and other institutions that I've collected along the way. And you know how many pieces of paper I take to when I meet up with people now? 0, not one. I just don't take one. We start from scratch, and you don't. And it's not because I've remembered all that stuff. Sure, it's probably there. I think it's innate within us. I just don't do it because I think there's more value in just sitting back and listening to the people and letting them explore themselves. I think that's where the true value is, especially when you're trying to be, not even help's not the right word, but when you're with a person to help them, I don't like using it, but explore and open, so
yeah,
that bounce.
Absolutely.
I did want to say thanks for the part about relationships. For me, that's about not losing your friends, but I think it's about losing your friends as well, because I really love the balance part that you spoke about there. And I've got, I've got quite a few acquaintances and quite a few friends, and I know that some will stay and some will go, and it's always on. And the network I have around me at this point in time is the strongest I've ever had. I've still got my mates up in Redcliffe, up in Brisbane that I love dearly, and we keep that connection going, and in Sydney and WA and to an extent Adelaide. But it's the fringe players, as I call them, where I don't invest and they don't invest, where it's not two-way, it's very one-way. So for me, the best takeout of tonight was actually that bit of advice. If that balance isn't there, and you're continually drawing from one or the other, then it's actually okay not to have that.
Yeah, and absolutely, and I think it's a big conditioning of when we're younger that we judge a relationship and the depth of relationship on time. And for many people, that when you expose yourself to someone in a moment, you can create a deep relationship. And it's to recognize the capacity as we grow that we always have that capacity to develop deep relationships. And that's, I look at, it's been part of my life, in the younger years of you possibly hold on to intimate relationships longer than what you need to, because it might feel as a doubt within yourself that you can't get anything better than where you are at this particular point. That if I was to leave this, well, what would I, and to not recognize that I can create as I already have. And at any particular moment in time.
Yeah, that resonates with me. I've been married 20 years, and I've got to say the last 12 months have been the best ever, and the 12 before that were the best ever. And so sticking there, that's my beautiful girl. But it was never at the beginning. It was. I'm never a love at first sort of guy, and it was difficult. It was hard, and then we sort of grew with each other, and then we started to respect and appreciate ourselves first, and then the unity that we have. So we never say it was great at the beginning. It's actually the best it's ever been. And that comes with it. Well, thank you, mate. You are an absolute superstar. I love seeing you getting out and about. I'm really enjoying your interviews you did. I think the one with Tom was a cracker, Tom Barnett. I really enjoyed that. You've done some fantastic ones. If people haven't seen your Facebook page, they should really go and have a look at it. The Quantum Movement. There's a lot of good stuff on there. I know you've got a launch of your content to people outside your business realm in your previous world. And if that's something people feel drawn to, then go check out the Quantum Movement. I certainly recommend you, mate. I think one of the most powerful 10-minute videos I've ever seen in my life was your one on suicide, and I almost had a tear last week when I spoke about it. It was that impactful. It really was. So kudos to you, brother. I'm glad we've connected.
Thank you so much, Jason. Look, it's we started this off as just to have a chat online for what was going on in Victoria, and very much driven by I'd say your passion and compassion for those so many people around you. And it felt just good to do this, a number of times beyond it, and whatever happens beyond here. I mean, I love these conversations, and I love, look, I always, to me, in speaking to others, it's not what I have to share. It's all about the space that's created, and what you create is very significant. And I just thank you. And then what you provided in, I suppose, exposure and having this type of conversation, making it possible, has been, I'm very, very humbled by it.
Thanks, mate. Well, we'll stay in touch, no doubt, because we've got a few things we're going to have a chat about. So thank you for everyone who's ever tuned into any of these, the 4 of them. Like I said, Jason and I are having a conversation about something different, potentially. I don't know. We'll see where that goes. but really hope people got something out of this. And I'm reading comments now, and thank you for all your comments. It's very nice. My mouse is frozen. I did want to go back to, was it Tracy Ann? Yeah. Once you overcome the fear of death, you can start to fully enjoy life. And yeah, 100% agree with that. And thank you, Kate. So thanks, everyone. Take care. And yeah, love to you all. Peace, compassion, and plants.
Thanks very much. Thanks again, Jason.
See you guys.